Hello everybody, it's RegiTime here, and we're about to do a group session on 13 on Snap where I'm playing and I'm being sweated by Russ, Alexis, who's currently having some technical issues, Rich, Samir and Jurgen, who are all part of my Skype study group. They play various different limits, different games, different levels of experience, and we're just going to be basically just playing and chatting about the spots that we get into and talking about just kind of how different people would approach it, because we have players at different levels right now. So for example, Alexis, if he gets connected, is quite experienced. Samir and Jurgen are both quite new to the game, and Russ has been playing for a while. There's not going to be any like super high level stuff. It's going to be mostly just talking about the common thoughts that we think people have when they're going through these hands, and trying to just hopefully figure out how to outthink people. So we'll go from there. Wow, I've completed a challenge just by clicking I'm back. These challenges are a piece of piss, aren't they? All you got to do is...
Yeah, there's so many pop-ups on 88.
Click I'm back and you're in business. It's fucking tremendous. Tables look pretty good right now. There's not that many rigs kicking around. Where's this guy from? Norway. These Norwegians are damn aggressive. I'm going to 3-bet here. We don't have to 3-bet in this spot, but I think I prefer to. Wow, look at that size of that. Woo. I think we can get out of this one, guys. Jack's versus Ace King. Oh, we'd have had a sweat. We would have lost. So yeah, hopefully as we go along there'll be a lot of folding, because that's just the way it is in Snap Poker. And unfortunately, since the update, my replay isn't working. But if we do get in any interesting spots that I want to go back and look at, I'll just find my Hold'em manager up and we'll review the hand in Hold'em manager. I usually just click the hand replayer and do it that way. But since it's updated, when I click the hand replayer now, it just nothing comes up. And then when I look in my, like, is it taskbar or something, is it called? I don't know. It's just like a blank white sheet, so I've not fucking clue what's wrong with it. But it's a bit of a pain in the ass.
Do you think the VPIP is lower in Snap than on regular tables? Because the HUDs are gone?
I think it's lower because people just fold more. Because they can. When you're playing regular tables, you have to play every hand in Snap, so be careful I'm going to word this. But on regular tables, you can't just like turbo fold the ace-4 suited if you wanted to. You're kind of forced to wait till it's your turn. So I think people just open more from more positions because you can't do the snap folding thing, like ace-4 off on the button. In a regular game, that would be snap. That would be an open for everybody. I wouldn't be surprised if some people are saying, you know what, it's ace-4 off. I don't need to open it, because it's just ace-4 off over. So I'm not going to. Jack 2 is a hand I'm going to snap fold. But if it folded to be a regular game, again, I might just open it against the right players in the blind. So yeah, I think the VPIPs are definitely lower. And it's just a product of people just being able to snap fold like the bottom end of the ranges for every seat that they might open if they were forced to wait to take their action. So that's why I think it's low. I don't think it's because of no HUDs. I just think it's because people don't need to play as tight, because don't need to play as loosely, because they can just snap fold and wait and just keep snap folding until they get dealt better, more playable hands. Oh, there's Grant. He looks like he's doing well too. Nobody didn't want to join us. He's too busy. Too busy grinding.
He's too busy raising your blinds.
He's not going to get away with it. That's what he's not going to do. And I hate playing against people who are in the group. Well, now he's going to get away. He's not going to get away with it against Grish, but because I don't know, I just have an issue playing against people that I know, because and they were like giving me money to help them. But at the same time, if they're in the same pool, what can I do? I just play straight up versus them. I'll be honest with you, I don't get out of line. I don't soft play, but at the same time, where if I've got a chance to either 3-bet bluff versus Grant or fold, I'll just fold usually. And I think he kind of does the same. It's the same with James, who's in the pool. And when I was playing on Sky, I think it was the same with Sam as well. It's a bit awkward, but I pretty much just don't go out of my way to get in their way and vice versa, because it adds an extra layer of complexity that, to be frank, you just don't fucking need. So if you kind of all have this unwritten agreement that you kind of don't get in each other's way, even though we've never had the discussion, it's kind of just how it feels. Who knows? They might be exploiting the shit out of me for all I know, and just fucking knowing that if I fall at them, I've literally always got it. They might be completely fucking raping me, but in my head, I just can't be asked messing with them. I'd rather just play super tight against them and not have that extra layer of complexity of, is this a bit of meta game or whatever. I just don't need that kind of aggravation in my life.
So you wouldn't go all in pre?
Yeah, I would do. If I had aces, I would 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet, ace, king, queens. I just play dead straightforward. And I'm not going to be dead. If I was to bluff, I probably wouldn't take it, to be honest with you. I would probably just be like, you know what, I just don't need the situation where now these guys know that. I don't know how I'll word it, because I don't want it to sound like collusion, because there's no collusion or anything like that going on, because I haven't had any discussions, but it is just a matter from my point of view of, if I start getting involved in that 3-bet, 4-bet, and they start playing back at me a little bit, you just create a dynamic that just doesn't need to be there, and all you end up doing is just cutting each other's win rate and just creating a bad relationship, which I don't want to have. So I just try and just play really straight up and honestly. And I've been in with Grant. We've got it all in pre-flop on Sky a couple of times, and we've both had it. I've had aces. I think one hand we both had aces, for example. Another hand, I think I had queens and Grant had ace king or something like that. So there's definitely no collusion going on. We get it in against the top of our ranges. It just feels like we don't get out of line against each other. But I'm the same with lots of regulars. Not even the ones I don't know. Like there's a player on here called Major Cannon, and I just don't fuck with him because he's a good player, and I'm not asked about fucking with good players. I want to fuck around with people who think you can force to make mistakes. If I'm not going to be able to force players to make too many mistakes, I'm not that bothered about dicking around with them and trying to build some dynamic that just doesn't need to be there. So that's kind of how I am. It's not just people that know it's against anyone who's game of respect, basically. If they respect your game, I'm way less likely to fuck with you.
Okay.
So I'm going to at least double barrel here against someone who just limps the button, because his range is going to be full of weak ace-x suited connectors and stuff. I mean, yeah, he's not going to fold pocket pairs and shit there, but he's just going to have loads of stuff that I'm just happy to just pick the pot up, and I know most of the time I'm only making him fold worse hands, but we don't have a hand there we can check call with, really. So I'd rather just continuation, but we've got 2 overs, we're going to get a bunch of folds. And typically when I speak to new players, I would just say to them, there's only 2 reasons for betting. That's for value and as a bluff, because that's kind of all you want to be thinking about when you're new. You don't want added complications of trying to think about picking up dead money and all those kind of things.
Or balancing ranges.
My views on balancing are pretty much out of sync with lots and lots of players. I don't give a fuck about balancing my range. The only reason you want to balance your range is against people who you think are capable of exploiting any imbalances you have. In these games, there's probably some good regulars who will exploit my imbalance, but there's not very many, I don't think. I'm just not worried. The only time I worry about being balanced is if I think I'm playing against somebody who is good enough to spot that I'm imbalanced and really give me a hard time over it. And here I was just going to keep checking and calling because it's hard to get value, but now with a 2-pair, we're just going to lead out to prevent him checking back with, if he's got Queen Jack or some kind of Queen 3 suited or something. I don't want him checking him back.
Well, I have a question on how you deal with people you see a lot on the tables. Let's say you have 2,000 hands with the same person. I noticed in Holder Manager you could go through every hand you have on your opponent. Do you think it's a good time spent to go through the hands and check out his stats and try to gauge how he plays? If it's some players you see quite often, to exploit any weaknesses, or do you think it's just better to just focus on your own game and just play the best you can?
Most of my study is when I'm playing Snap is based on learning about my regular opponents. And what I would do is I would open Hold'em Manager, I would open my last session of Snap Poker or my last 2 sessions of Snap Poker, and I would update all my reads on the regulars, and I would like any new regulars that have come across. I would start like making initial points on them. So I would have a player like, and then we'll wait till one comes up. The thing is, the games are that good at the minute. They might not many go. Major Cannon, I think he's in the pool at the minute. He's someone who got a lot of hands on, and so I'd make notes on him, and my notes on him might eventually look something like that. This guy plays 22-18, he's got a 6% 3-bet, and he's got an 80% 4-3-bet. And then that'd be like the bulk of my note. Then I'd go into his post-flop stuff, and I'd be like, if he's got like 100% C-bet in a 3-bet pot, I would put that down as a note. Just anything that he does that doesn't really fit in with how I think the general population of regulars play, I will put like ways that I can try and exploit them. And if there aren't many ways to exploit them, like Major Cannon hasn't got many ways to exploit him, maybe he does fall to too many 3-bets, then I would just look at a player and think, you know what, this guy's hard to play against, so I'm just going to play straight up against them. If I can't find ways to exploit people, I'm kind of just going to have to rely on my actual hand strength and just trying to have card advantage over them as much as possible, because if they're good players, I'm not going to have much of a skill advantage. Positional advantage is going to be a push, because he's going to be in position on me as much as I'm going to be on him. So I'll just try and have like card and positional advantage as much as I can against him, because I'm not going to be able to play him very much, because he's a good player. Anyway, let's have a look at this. But I don't know anything about Car's law whatsoever. He has squeezed. We block aces and kings pretty hard. It's a good spot, in my opinion, to back raise. If he shoves, we're just going to call it off. Where he can definitely be squeezing at pocket pairs, and we can get him to fold equity. When he jams, we're going to, unless he's got aces or kings, we're going to be getting the right price to call. And we could have just 3-bet pre-flop, but I'm not that fond of 3-betting under the gun with just ace-king offsuit. And it sometimes gives us opportunities to do shit like this, which, if you are interested in balance, I think it was Samir asking, it's a good way to like balance your flatting range if you want to, by having some hands that sometimes you're doing this with, so people can't always just squeeze you and think you're going to call or fold. It's nice to be able to do this as well sometimes. That is not a particularly nice flop, because a lot of his range is going to be pocket queens, pocket jacks, that type of thing. But at this point, I think I'm just going to shove, and maybe he folds fucking pocket nines or something. I mean, if he's got pocket jacks, pocket tens, pocket queens, he's never folding. But we have equity against that kind of, against like all this one pair stuff. So if he's just got one pair, we have decent equity. We have some fold equity, albeit not much. We might get him off a chop with ace queen, who knows. So I'm just going to jam here, because check calling doesn't make sense, doesn't appeal to me, and check folding definitely doesn't appeal to me. So I'm going to jam at this point and hope he falls. He's got the king, it's good for him. You know, and that's just one of those things. He's played the hand quite well there. I mean, obviously, to me, he should just jam it pre-flop, because I'm not folding when they do that. I've no idea why he's slow played, because he can just get all the money in pre, but whatever. It's just what it is.
Probably read Black Rain's book.
Sorry?
Black Rain's book. He says you should always limp with pocket kings and aces.
Always limp with them? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've tried to do that, but
what, so
I really hate it.
He advocates limping pre-flop with aces and kings?
Well, he basically means that you want to get as many people into the pot as possible to up the pot size.
Are you sure you've understood that correctly? Because that doesn't sound like any sort of advice I've ever read from.
Well, I might have misunderstood it. I think that's what I read.
I think you should go back and like revisit that, because that doesn't sound like the sort of advice that I would expect to see someone of his caliber give, because that's someone whose game I respect a lot. I think you may have misunderstood what he means by that, and without seeing it myself, I can't really say right now. We're just going to call here, obviously, because we have the notes, and hopefully he just bluffs the river.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
I can hear. Is that Alexis?
Oh, yes,
Are we in, sir? You're very quiet, buddy. We can hear you, but you are very, very quiet.
Let me check.
And they're kind of, I've lost focus on this hand on the left table because I was too busy sweating my hand on the right. I should have absolutely c-bet that flop, but now he's potted the turn. I'm just going to have to fold. That's something I will sometimes do when I'm making videos or doing group sessions. When you're talking a lot about one thing or addressing a question, I can occasionally like misplay a hand. That ace jack for me was a definite c-bet. So don't think I checked it back as part of my strategy. I didn't. I just missed the c-bet because I wasn't focused. So anyone watching the video, anyone who's in the sweat thinking, why did Reg check back there? It wasn't a conscious act. It was a mistake on my part.
Hey Reg, if we can come back on this Ace King hand earlier, what other hands would you do that with? Which is calling and re-raising.
I've done it with. I would have aces and kings in my range sometimes. I don't 3-bet very much at all versus under the gun because I think we get way too many folds. If I'm 3-betting versus under the gun, I'm way more likely to be 3-bet bluffing against somebody who I think opens too wide. Against regulars, I will frequently flat aces and kings pre-flop, in the hope that someone squeezes so I can back raise, or just so my hands under-bet post-flop and we can get value in spots where other people wouldn't get value. You can slow play more. You get people to thin value bet into you with way wider ranges than they would if you 3-bet. I just like to turn up with in hand because you see it on the forums all the time. People saying, when you haven't been 3-bet pre-flop, you see all the regulars saying, "Oh, we can rule out aces and kings because you didn't 3-bet pre." If that's how most of the regulars are thinking, how cool is it to have aces and kings in a spot where almost every person doesn't think you can have them because you haven't 3-bet? So I will definitely have that as part of my strategy there. I would have played aces and kings exactly the same way a lot of the time. Not all of the time, but a lot of the time. I'm going to c-bet and just call it off here with this ace-10. It's a shit board, but we have the backdoor flush draw and 2 overs. And his stack size is such that when we bet here and he jams, we're just going to be getting the right price just to call it off against one pair and stuff. I mean, yeah, we're probably behind here, but if we get what we're getting, like nearly 2-1, we need like 25% equity just with our overs. And if he's got any bluffs in his range, if he's got any flush draws, just any random king queens and shit like that, it's not a great spot, but exactly, look, he's got stuff like that enough of the time where we can just hit the call button. Just because this is the kind of thing when you hear people putting ranges together, it's just so very often you see people putting just random spew into people's ranges. They always just put hands that make sense, and the Jack-8 suited makes almost no sense there. But you see enough from bad players and players that aren't playing 100 blinds, where if you've got somewhere near enough equity just to call, which we didn't there. We needed 25% equity. We're getting 2-1, which is we need 33% equity. But again, if against his value range, we're not going to suck out that much, obviously, because we haven't got that much equity. But you've got to put that kind of just random spew into there too, because people just have it. It's just people could just have 10 jack there and decide, fuck it, I'm just going to try and make him fold, or king queen. There's all kind of things you can have that you can't realistically put into a range, but they just have it enough. And I guess the regular, when we get raised in a 3-bet pot, their ranges are going to be way better. But when you get these players who just don't have 100 big blinds and they're just playing bad poker, they have all sorts of weird random shit that you can't legislate for, and you just got to believe it's there enough of the time so you can just bet call it off. That's a pretty shitty board for us in terms of we've 3-bet, he's called. But at the same time, it's a pretty shitty board for him as well, because unless he's floating us with the pocket pair, we're probably still ahead. So at that point, I'm just going to bet an amount where I commit myself to call, and then just trusting the fact that overall we're doing fine against his range, and that we're going to get a bunch of folds. We're going to make him fold his equity a hell of a lot of the time too, which is always nice. Here I'm just contemplating whether to 3-bet and get it in. I think this guy's spewing enough where I can.
You definitely get it in right now.
If he jams, I'm just going to sign and fold, because he's going to have tons and tons of just 2 high cards where we're flipping and what have you. If he had a bigger stack, I would frequently just call and play some post-flop stuff, but there's not enough money left behind to try and outplay somebody post-flop with a hand like this, so I just want to try and get all the money in now while I like my equity, and a lot of the time he's just going to fold, which is fine, because a lot of times he's going to be folding 2 overs, which is pretty much a coin flip against us. Could have bet this turn up here, but I'd rather just keep the pot as small as possible. If he checks back, I will value bet the river. As it happens, I'm just going to call now, because he can be betting under pairs, he can be betting just naked hearts. So while the pot's still small, I'm happy just to bluff catch, because all my hand is right now is a bluff catcher. And then he's just checked back and given up straight away there. So we maybe could have tried to value bet the river, but it's thin enough. I like my thin value, but I also like to just when I've got a bluff catcher out of position, I like to. And again, as much as don't care that much about balance, I like to have a decent amount of check calls in my range, so I'm not just always check folding. And I don't care too much about balance, but I don't like to be just always check folding when I'm checking. I like to be having some hands that I can be check calling with too, just for my own peace of mind, just so I know that myself that I'm not super easy to play against.
Yeah, I think there's been a tendency to reduce the amount of times you see bet too. So you have to put more check calls in your range.
I see like loads of people now, and they're doing these things to. And I don't understand game theory very well. I've never studied it. I'm not that asked about it for the games I play. But it seems to me a lot of people who are like trying to play a game theory optimal strategy, they're checking way too many value hands to protect the weak part of the range, and I just don't get that. For me, it doesn't add up to me. I have to check here because if I always bet my value hand in this spot, it weakens my checking range too much. And I understand it in a way, but another part of me just thinks you're playing in games where the biggest mistake people are making is they're calling too much. So just play exploitably and just bet to exploit their common tendency of calling too much. And I think people, they just check and then they get themselves in a mess because a scary turn will come and they won't want to bet, and they just get totally messed up and miss tons of value because they're trying to protect like the weaker parts of the range, which, to be frank, I'm not that bothered about protecting. If somebody wants to bluff me off when I'm checking bottom pair to them, I'm not that bothered about getting bluffed off bottom pair. It really doesn't bother me that much. Maybe that's a slight technical leak, but it's just not such a big deal to me that it's not something I'm going to alter my value betting strategy, which makes me a ton of money. I'm not going to alter that just to protect the weakest parts of my range. It's not really in my style. To me, it doesn't work in these games. It's better just to reach out, get the value when it's there. And
so what's your c-bet percentage right now?
My c-bet percentage is about 58%, I think, so that 58-60%. It fluctuates. Sometimes I just c-bet an absolute fucking ton, and sometimes I'll just not c-bet very much. And there's no rhyme or reason to that. A lot of the time, it's just how the games are playing. It's just how I'm running that session. If I'm always having hands I can c-bet, my c-bet might be 80% one session because I'm not going to be there trying to protect my c-bet in range. If I'm constantly missing, if I'm getting dealt mostly just too high cards, and I'm constantly getting boards like we've got now, I'll be checking an absolute ton. So it's just it varies based on how well I'm running, basically.
Because I remember maybe 1 year ago or so, I heard a lot of people saying you should c-bet around 65-70% of the time, and that seems to have died down as a trend right now.
Yeah, but I don't understand that you should c-bet this percentage. I wouldn't ever try and aim to have a percentage of something. I would just try and do whatever seems natural to me. And people say, no, you should try and play 20-18. No, just play situations as they present themselves to you and let your stats be whatever they are. That's my way of looking at it. I'm just going to check back here on this river because I'm a little bit worried that we might be beat, and it's hard to get an extra street of value. There's a not unreasonable chance you can have some kind of 6x here. I think you probably check raises a turn a lot with 6x, but I just think it's too thin to value bet, and we could have possibly got value from that. But when there's a 4 straight on the board, we were talking about in the group earlier where Grant, I think, checked back a turn and then got put in a tough spot on the river and someone potted into him. That's exactly the spot where I'll bet the turn with the intention of checking back the river. Because if I bet the turn and I get raised, in that spot exactly against that stack size, maybe I wouldn't fold. But in spots where I'm going for relatively thin value, and when we've only got, say, a set on a 4 straight board, it is quite thin. In spots like that, I'd rather bet the turn myself than and get some extra value I can still get from draws than check the turn back and then just someone pots the river and then you're guessing. That's the kind of spot where I'll just almost you're blocking the turn. If you bet the turn, there's a good chance it buys you a free showdown on the river if you want one, because people will continue checking to you if they expect you to continue betting, but they'll lead into you a lot once they think you've got kind of like pot controlling or giving up. So that's exactly the kind of spot we were talking about earlier. Not sure if you all saw the hand. I know some of you were in the chat at the time. It's exactly the kind of spot where I will bet a turn, usually with the intention of like bet folding a turn, because we can get value from draws, we can get value from like 2 pairs and things.
Yeah.
And that rather than check it back, then someone just mashes pot on the river, and then you're just guessing anyway, and usually they've got it. So I'd rather bet, say, 2/3 pot on the turn and know I can get some clean value than check it back and call a pot size bet on the river, where usually they're just going to have it. It seems like a better strategy to me to like bet there.
And after betting on a turn, if it leads on the river, what do you do?
Depends how big it is. If we'd have gone all in, I probably would have folded. Even though we got like a set, the board was just so coordinated. Our set isn't much better than an overpair there, really, because how likely is it someone's value betting 2 pair, for example? They're either going to have a straight or nothing, and usually they're just going to have the straight. I mean, a limped pot we isolated. There's all kinds of like 6/7s. He can have tons of 6x in his range. That takes a line of check call, shove, basically. So yeah, I would fold, because my top, I've got a set, but on a 4 straight board, a set's value is significantly decreased. So I just hate paying off against these players that I expect are passive.
It
Seems like a nice flop. Right. So this is something else that lots of people have problems dealing with, the min donks. If you have problems dealing with min donks, treat them like checks. Imagine he hasn't bet. Put your hand on the screen and just say he hasn't bet. The pot's now $2.30. What would I do if I'd been checked to and the pot was $2.30? And my bet I would say I'm going to bet 170. So I'm just going to bet one. I'm going to ignore the fact he's min donked into me. I'm going to treat it like he's just checked and then just continue that way. Because tons of people have a lot of problems with them dealing with min donks, and to me it's the easiest thing to deal with in the world. If you get min donked and 3-bet, just treat it like you've been check raised. I see people that just if you want to check back, if it's a board where you would typically want to check back on, just call them min donk, because you never fold to them. Obviously, just treat don't spew against them. Just treat min donks like checks, and you'll find yourself playing way better against them then. That's a really good river, because hopefully now he's just giving him a straight. I'm really tempted to just jam here, because if he's got a king, he's not folding. I wouldn't have thought. And he can have lots of kings. He can have flopped to straight, for example. He can have queen king, which is hard because there's only one combo of it. One combo of the suited
especially with a donk.
is king jack. So I don't know whether a jam or just pot it. I think we're just going to pot it actually. And then he folded, so I'm not really sure there, but he can just have so many kings. The jack's such a good card for his range there. When a good card for his range comes and I still think I'm ahead, I would typically make a huge bet, because I just expect to get called a ton.
The min bet donk.
Here we're going to squeeze the ace queen, and I'm going to fold if I get 4-bet. I think it's a really good spot to try and get some value. But if we get 4-bet, ace queen's just going to be in rotten shape. And I very rarely c-bet in multi-way pots, so I'm not going to be c-betting on this board where I don't expect to get too many folds.
Yeah,
wow, look at this min back. This is a really grim spot now. This is a spot I don't ever recall being in. Wow. I mean, we're not folding, obviously, but I think jamming would be total spew. So we're just going to call now and just going to pray to fucking hit. Because there's not much else we can do in this spot. Going all in is pure spew. Folding when we're getting 6-1 is ridiculous. The bad thing here now is if some other guy just went all in all of a sudden, and then you're like, wow, we just put $6 in pre-flop with ace queen and not even seeing a flop. Now we have to call again because we're getting 8-1 and we've got 2 overs in the back door, nut flush draw. Well, we are undoubtedly behind here, and we could end up now paying off. I think he's got aces, but I'm just not going to fold at this point. And I think we've been completely not owned, because he just played the hand really weird. But I'd be stunned if he doesn't have aces or queens here, aces or kings. But I mean, at this point, we just can't fold. The pot's too big, and he just have the kings, whatever. It's just disappointing. If he makes a proper raise pre-flop, there we can just get away from our hand. But he just hasn't given me, through his own like really like weird bad play, he's never given me opportunity to fold, which is a shame because at every point I kind of wanted to fold, but we would always just get in too much of a price. I'd rather just have missed that turn so we could have folded to the inevitable jam. He's very obvious he's got aces or kings there most of the time, but who knows, he might just have fucking jacks and be being a moron because he's clearly not a regular.
So even with those other players behind you, you still think you have to call there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know I'm opening myself up to somebody jamming, but we're getting 6-1. You know, when I'm getting 6-1, it's a massive multi-way part. No, I can't fold pre-flop. Then the flop I can't fold because we're getting 8-1 on the flop. So folding would be ridiculous. And then we have the worst piece of luck in that we hit the turn, but we hit the queen instead of the ace. And we could maybe fold, but because it looks very much like he just got aces or kings, but he might be bad enough to just have jacks there, and do exactly the same thing on the queen turn.
Right.
So I'm just not at that point. There's too much money in the pot. I just don't want to fold. Right, we've been donked into here. I'm going to call once because he might just be donking all kinds of crap, and we have a pair. So we have some 2-pair outs. We have backdoor straight, backdoor flush. That's a really good card. Going to keep me interested till the river, I would have thought. I'm tempted just to raise here, actually. And then just, like, raise a point where we can shove the river. If we get shoved on, we probably have to call because of our equity. But what I don't want to do here is call, break, and then just bet the river and us have to fold. I think a lot of the time he's just going to have, like, ace-x, 1-pair type hands. So I'm going to make a small raise here, and then I'm going to shove the river if he checks to me, no matter what the river is. And if he shoves on me now, I'm probably just going to call it off because we're going to have tons of outs. We've got 2-1. So this is like basically just a maths problem now. We've got, hopefully, 9 flushed outs. Hopefully we've got, well, our gut shouts are going to be good. We've got like some 6s. If he hasn't got a set, we've got like all 2-pair outs too. So let's try and count them all. We've got 9 flush outs to settle over here. 9 flush outs. We've got another 3. So we've got 12 clean outs, I would say. And then we've got 2 7s, 3 8s. So like 15 outs maybe. And 15 outs is whatever that is, like 30% equity. We're getting, I'm just going to call it. It's spewy. It's kind of, this is the problem you give yourself when you raise a turn. But I'll raise a turn because I think I can call a shove. And now all of a sudden I should have just shoved. I didn't realise I wasn't going to be calling all in. And it's really quite unfortunate for us that he just turned to 2-pair. Because if he doesn't turn the 2-pair there, he's probably going to fold the turn. So again, we don't have to raise there. But I just think a lot of the time he's just going to have 1 pair and we're just going to make him fold 1 pair. Or he's going to call once and then fold the river to the shove. The raise the turn, shove the rivers, when people just call, is like a really profitable line. It's just unfortunate there that he turned the 2-pair and then we obviously we're not going to make somebody fold 2-pair in that spot. But we just have so much equity there. And that's when it's a kind of like lots of players wouldn't take. They would just call again and then you would just fold the river, and to me we could just do better than that, and I think our line was better than just call, turn, fold river. But there's an argument for that just raising the flop as well, I guess, because donk bets just don't rep very much very often. So I think that's the line a lot of you guys probably wouldn't have taken, I'm going to guess.
No, not so much. I always find it when they donk bet pot. That's always when it starts getting a bit tricky because, if you call that, you're going to face another one on the turn. And I think as played, it's
I think when we flop 1 pair with backdoor draws, if we're just folding to like a single donk bet, we're playing way too weak, I think, Russ. So we have to call the flop, then with us turning the equity, then it's like a good spot to raise, in my opinion. Excuse me for coughing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time there, if he's donking like ace jack or something like that, he might call the turn and just tap out on the river because we were a bit deeper there too. So we still left ourselves with like a decent chunky river bet where we can sometimes make him fold ace-x or something like that, because when we raise the turn, we rep a really strong hand and people probably wouldn't be calling that often with just 1 pair there. And the good thing about doing it with equity, something we've talked about a lot personally, Russ, is that you just get to suck out so often. When he had ace-4 there, so we had 2 pairs, so we didn't get our trip outs out. But even against his 2 pairs, we still had 14 clean outs. So even when we get called there, we're still going to stuck out fucking what's 14 to, we're still going to stuck out nearly 30% of the time. So when you've got like 30% pot equity, you really don't need an awful lot of fold equity to make that turn raise incredibly profitable. It just so happened that this time we ran into the top of his range, and it just sucks when you do that. You run at the top of someone's range, it sucks, and it makes you think you played the hand badly. But I don't think we did, because I think we all know just what mad respect turn raises get in these games. People respect turn raises if they fold to them a fucking ton. So if we've got so much fold equity there, and we've already got the pot equity is already there, and that's what aggression basically is. Aggression is a combination of like pot equity and fold equity. We've got a ton of pot equity, like we've got aces pre-flop. So we've got like as much pot equity as we could possibly have. We know we can be dead aggressive. If we haven't got a bunch of pot equity, but we've got a lot of fold equity because you know your villains really well, and you think there's a good chance that you can make them fall in certain spots, then that's really good. But I wouldn't ever make a play just thinking I had fold equity. I would you need the pot equity to back you up for the times you got the fold equity a bit wrong, because you can accurately estimate your pot equity. Fold equity is always just a guessing game because we don't know what the other person has, so we can only ever estimate like fold equity. But once we've got 30% pot equity, for me it's always a license to start semi-bluffing once you've got that much, because you just don't need to get too many folds.
Which other hands would you put in your range there?
Sorry?
Which other hands would you put in your range would you be raising on the turn here?
So for slow playing the flop, if a flop to set, I would maybe think about raising the turn with the flop set. Like anything that I've turned to pair with, if I've got a straight, usually it's never going to be air. It's either going to be like a picked up semi bluff like we had, or it's going to be something that I've been slow playing, or it's going to be something that where my hands improved on the turn. Very rare would I just have complete air in my range there. My range is going to range from the bottom of it, which is where we were, like pair plus draws, and the top of it's going to be obviously top set or something like that. And there's not going to be very much just total air, unless my air has like decent blockers in some way, which there wasn't that much we could block on that board.
But so you would raise sets there.
Yeah, probably, because the board's starting to get a bit wet, wasn't it? There was 2 to a flush, there was 3 to a straight out there. So yeah, I would raise sets there because, again, I think on the turn especially, how I expected that to go down was he was going to call with an ace on the turn, and then usually fold it to a river shove. That's kind of what I expected to happen. I expected him to either fold straight away if he was just bluffing. I expect him to call with stuff like ace jack, ace queen, ace 10, and then fold that to a river shove if he didn't hit 2 pair. So yeah, on the turn you can raise your value range because you think you're going to get called, and the reason I raise the turn there isn't so necessarily if we get the fold there and then it's great, but I'm raising the turn to try and just set up a river bluff kind of thing. Yep. It's a play that just works really well. It didn't work then because we ran into the top of someone's range, like we say. But I'll frequently semi-bluff turns with the intention of just shoving the river if I miss, because people just check to you, and usually then they've just capped the range at 1 pair. And do people really want to just call off like 65, 70 big blinds on the river with just 1 pair? Typically, if you put like a hand on a forum where you bet the flop, called the turn, and then check the river, you only had 1 pair, typically people would advise you to check fold. So that's typically what people are doing. They're trying to desperately get to showdown, and then they just tap out in the end to the pressure, unless it's like a total whale or something. We're not going to get a whale to fold that top pair, but against most regulars and semi-regulars, I think it works really, really well. I'm probably just going to shove here on this guy because his stack's so short. We can't make a proper 3-bet.
Couldn't we say then on that hand that it's good to re-raise the turn, but when he jams on us, we should only be calling with flush draw and open-ended straight draw?
Yeah, if he jams on us and we've I would never be bet folding that turn myself. Sorry, raise folding that turn. I'm always going to make sure I've either got like a really strong hand like a set or a straight or something, or 2 pairs, or I'm going to have like a really strong draw. It's super rare. I would find myself like the only time I'd raise fold there is if I ever had like just a complete airball bluff. But I'm just never going to have an airball bluff there. So I can't imagine a scenario where I would raise fold a turn very often. maybe in a multi-way pot or something like that. If someone's made like a really small, like, I don't know, say you're in a multi-way pot and someone's bet 180 into $8 and you've got a strongish hand that isn't super nutted, and then the third player in the pot shoves over your raise, then I could see myself raise folding a turn, but not in a heads-up pot like that. In that exact situation, I don't think I'd ever have a raise fold in my range, because my range is just going to consist, like I said, of really strong draws and strong made hands. If I didn't want to get it all in, I just wouldn't raise. So it's not been the most successful session in terms of making money, because we've been felted twice, but that happens sometimes, you know, and it's part of the game. One of the things, like, I think James particularly and a couple of others compliment me on, is like, when I get stacked, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And you've got to develop that attitude as a player. If you, like, take it personally every time you get felted, or if you're always beating yourself up and you're not getting angry about it, nothing good can come of it. You're going to get, if you play a lot of poker, you're going to get felted on a daily basis, and quite often multiple times on a daily basis. You've just got to get used to it. It's why we have bankrolls. It's just part of the game, you know. And yeah, getting felted now, it takes a lot to tilt me these days. And yeah, I've been stacked twice. It's quite irritating, especially when you're making a video. But whatever, you know, it's just part of poker. We completely missed this flop, so I'm just not going to see that. It's not the sort of board I expect to get a ton of folds on, and we have almost no equity. So now I'm tempted to bet, because I think he can have ace high. Now he's checked back. I'm tempted to bet smallish twice here just to get him to off his like ace x hands, because I think he would stab with pairs a lot. So I'm going to assume he's got a lot of ace high, and I'm just going to try and make bet sizes that I think encourage him to fold ace high. And if we get raised, which can sometimes happen, we're going to fold. Now we can't bet the river, because I think a lot of his fucking range is going to be ace high. So now I'm just giving up. This is the point where I'm just done with the hand. We could try and represent the ace, and if he hasn't got it, then we always get the fold. And if we check here and he checks back a hand like fucking 8-9, it's a bit of a pisser. But yeah, I'm just giving up at this point. Right, it's a multi-way pot, and we just called, didn't we? So I'm not going to donk. Wow, look at that. We're pretty sure we can just give up here at this point. I don't know this brow at all. I'm just going to start by check calling. It helps that we've got a backdoor flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. But my line here is going to be just check call twice, then decide on the river. And deciding on the river will be based on what card comes off and how much his bet is. At the minute, I'm quite confident we've got the best hand, because his sizing doesn't look like he's got us beat. Doesn't look like an ace-king sizing, looks more like an ace-jack type of sizing. So I'm not too scared of the diamond, to be honest with you. So I'm probably going to think here, and excuse me, I'm probably going to check call anything up to around $5 to $6. If he pots it, I'm probably just going to let him have it. And these are a lot of things I'll be thinking about when I'm playing. I'm just saying it for the video. I would usually decide what I'm going to do before it happens, because at least then I've made a decision whilst I've not been under pressure. You know, a lot of the time you can think, oh, I don't know what to do on this river, and you'll check too soon before you've thought it through, and then something will happen and you'll be under pressure of the time bank. If you can use your time bank to be like, right, what sizing am I calling here, what sizing am I folding to, and then just stick to that decision when it happens. Like now I'm just going to call because I decided I was going to be calling anything less than $6. It just makes it really easy on the when it happens. Then if he bets $7.50, I'll be like, right, well, I've said I'm going to fold, so now I'm going to fold, because that's a decision I've made whilst I've been not under any pressure. There's no adrenaline running through my body. I'm not like frustrated because he's bet big, because I've already decided how I'm going to react to whatever he does. And if you can always decide how you're going to react to what someone does before they do it, and it's easier to do this when you're out of position, because you get to control the pace of the action. When you're in position, you usually got to try and make those decisions on the turn. You've got to try and anticipate what river cards you want to see, what river cards you don't want to see, and then what bet sizes you're prepared to call on particular river cards. There's a lot more to consider when you're in position, and you've got to really consider it on the turn. Whereas when you're out of position, you can at least use your time bank to decide, right, if he bets here, how much am I calling? If he bets really quick, it might be that I'm not calling a $6 bet or a pot size bet unless he does it dead quick. And if he pot size bets dead quick, which is usually a quick bet, an indication of a bluff, then you might think, I'll call $9 if he does it quick, and I'll fold to $9 if he tanks. And just think of all the things, just think it through. So then when whatever it happens, you've kind of already got a plan for it, and then just execute your plan, and you're not likely to make any bad decisions because of like the pressure you've been put under, because you've made that decision while the situation's been depressurized. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's good advice. Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to fold here because we've got a shit hand. I don't mind seeing a flopping position for 2 big blinds with King Jack on the button against a fish, but when we get squeezed, King Jack's just got awful, like, reverse implied odds. A bit like the Ace Queen had earlier. And reverse implied odds typically are play related, not hand related. But the Ace Queen had bad reverse implied odds, and we get to see that in perfect action because we ended up just making a hand that cost us money, which is exactly what reverse implied odds is. King Jack offsuit for a min raise is fine. King Jack offsuit in a squeeze pot is horrendous. We just too often we end up making expensive second best hands with it. So yeah, I'm going to stop the video now. We'll continue this session for another 10 minutes or so. We're going to stop the video now because I don't like going over 45 minute videos. So I hope you guys on YouTube have enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please do ask them via Facebook, Reddit, wherever you see the video, on the video itself, whatever. I always try and respond to any comments, so if you've got any comments or questions, please leave them whenever you find the video, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and yeah, until the next video, I'll see you all later. Bye bye for now.